What happens when you stay true to who you are, even in environments that challenge everything that you believe in? In this episode, I'm joined by my incredible returning co-host, Fred Wasiak, principal and owner of Humanics Consulting, LLC, and his longtime friend of over, listen to this, 50 years, Timothy Rougeux, court-appointed monitor transforming Correctional Healthcare Systems. And what unfolds here is much more than a conversation. It's a powerful look at humanity, leadership, and the choices that truly define us. From early moments of their friendship and influence to navigating some of the most complex and high-pressure environments imaginable, Tim shares what it means to lead with respect, kindness, and integrity, even when the system around you doesn't always support it. We talk about why letting people follow their own path matters more than controlling it, how showing up consistently can open doors you never truly expected, the role of family, discipline, and foundation in shaping who you become, and what it looks like to hold on to your values even when they're truly tested. Follow your passion. Again, follow your passion. How many times have you heard that before? It's a simple phrase, but in this conversation, you'll hear just how powerful that mindset can be. And if this resonates with you, I invite you to stay connected. Visit todaysthedayliveit.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at todaysthedayliveit. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button on the Today's the Day Changemakers YouTube channel. And if you're looking for an inspirational book to read this summer, from 31 powerful voices, you can purchase our book, Today is the Day, Live It, online on Amazon, Target, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, and many other major retailers. It's about courage, it's about leadership, and it's about incredible change-making work and how every one of us is truly a change maker. Your voice matters, and today is the day. How are you going to live it? Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers Podcast. I'm your host, Jodi Hope Grinwald, and as I say every single week, I interview the changemakers, the inspirers, and those who are disrupting the status quo in the best way possible. And I have someone with me who disrupts the status quo every day, Mr. Fred Wasiak, who's been part of this podcast now, we figured 7 times, Fred?
I believe this is going on 7, yes.
No, I know. You want the hat at 10.
Well, I'm working toward it. I got a couple more referrals.
He's also the only one who has a jacket. I don't even have a Today's the Day Changemakers jacket. So I'm just so thrilled to have you here. Fred is the founder and owner of Humanics Consulting. He recently left a long-term role as the CEO and president of the Food Bank of South Jersey. And not that you need an introduction anymore, Fred. I'm not going to even
Thank you for having me again. And I'm thrilled about today.
Well, today, everyone, Fred introduced me to a longtime friend. How long, Fred, are you and Tim friends?
50 years ago, 75.
Yep, oh my goodness. Years. So, wow. Well, we're going to welcome Timothy Rougeux, who is Fred's friend for 50 years. Incredible. Hi, Tim. How are you?
Good morning, Jodi. I'm doing well.
How is it possible you could be old enough to know each other 50 years? That's incredible. That's like right out of the womb, right?
Drop the mic.
It feels like a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
So, Tim, I got to meet you at the book launch in California. You live in beautiful, sunny California, where it didn't have 2 feet of snow just a couple of weeks ago. And it was so wonderful to meet you. But where did you and Fred meet?
So Fred transferred into the high school as a sophomore. I was a senior. And I remember seeing Fred as an 8th grader playing in a basketball tournament. And he just had a very unique way of shooting the basket. And when I saw him as a sophomore playing basketball, I said, that's the kid that I saw in 8th grade. And Fred has always been able to shoot the basketball very well. Wasn't great on defense, slow, couldn't jump, but man, he could shoot. But then I had the privilege of coaching Fred in track and cross country. After I graduated high school, I don't know why, and the wisdom of the athletic director of our high school decided to hire me as the head coach for the track and cross country team. When I started the job in 1976, I was 17 years old. And I was driving a full-size school bus to the cross-country meets in Buffalo and in other places. I don't know how it happened. They came to me, they asked me to do this. I agreed. For the season, it was $100. That was practice 6 days a week. I'm going to school full time, working part time, and still had time for coaching my friends. But in Fred's senior year, Fred decided not to run cross country and that he wanted to focus on his first love, which is basketball. So he had to tell the coach or the captain of the cross country team, which was probably his best friend, my younger brother Philip. And Philip had already had the imagination and thought it through, and knowing the other teams, that our school was going to have a winning season with Fred as part of that team. And when Fred told him that he was not going to run, he was going to focus on basketball, Philip got quite angry. Did not like it at all. They probably didn't speak for a couple weeks. But then Fred came and told me that he was going to focus on basketball and not run cross country, which, Fred was a good runner. He was part of that first 7 that are counted in cross country meets. So we would have been better with him than without him. But my response was, follow your passion. Good luck. And what did I do, Fred?
I remember vividly. We were by the cage of the weight room which was at the boys' locker room, and you gave me a hug.
Yep.
You said that you're going to be great. Good luck, and we'll watch you when the season starts. That was a beautiful moment, Tim.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know why I had, that was my first reaction, to let a kid, even though it hurt our team tremendously, to go follow his passion with, no animosity, no frustration with it. I had to hear it from my brother Philip for weeks on end. And the woulda, coulda, shouldas if Fred had run on the team, but such is life. We're still friends today. So.
And how's Phil doing? Is he all right? Is he over it now?
Well, when we get together every year, we do have to hear about it for a
Yeah,
little
we have
while.
to hear about it.
Yeah.
My back still has scars when he pushed me into the locker room and had the locks on the little handles. Yeah, I still got a round
A dent.
a dent from that, but we have fun. But Tim, that's why we looked up to you. 17 years old, coaching the team, you just exuded natural leadership. And you think about 50 years ago, who were we back then? Who did we resemble as a group, as a team?
We're just, like most, we're just trying to find our way. But our parents had set a very good foundation for us with work hard, do the right thing for the right reason, and you'll be fine. It wasn't a matter of trying to get a career where you made money. It was, go do what you like to do. And every one of us, there's a group of 7 of us, Jodi, that continue to get together to this day. And every person is hugely successful in their chosen field. Now many of us are retired at this point. We have what, 2 left that aren't?
Yeah. They should be, but
they should.
The passion of what they're doing, they're having fun.
Yeah, and some like me retire but keep working. So
yeah, keeps you busy. But you have a unique story too about your family. You have a large family, don't you?
Yes, I do. You know, when you come from a large family, you just think it's normal, right? This is all normal things. So I'm the 8th child out of 11 to Bob and Margaret Rougeux. My parents got married in 1950. They had their first child 9 months later in 1951. And then my mother, from 50 to 63, my mother had 10 pregnancies. So basically, if my father was going to buy maternity clothes, she was going to wear them out. So that's basically what happened. Yeah, there is a set of twins in there. That's why 10 pregnancies, 11 children. Peter and Paul are child 5 and 6. So at one point in time, my parents had 4 babies in diapers. And in the 50s, there were no Pampers or things like that. It was all cloth diapers.
Oh,
Um,
good.
so what had to happen in a family that size is everything had to be in its place, everything had to be organized, and things were very strict in the house. You walked in the front door, you took your winter boots off, you put them on the right hand side in the hallway, not thrown there, but they had to be together. And, you couldn't have a mess. There was no mess. And many of us to this day are very, very neat, including myself. I have a lot of idiosyncrasies on keeping things organized. But I think it's wonderful, you know, um, after having said prayers every night for many years with the family, right? So we're able to get through the siblings very quickly, so it'd be God bless Jimmy, Jean, Billy, Beth, Peter, Paul, John, Timothy, Philip, Marie, and Daniel. And that's how it was. It's so in the room I was in, there were 2 bunk beds. So my brothers, John, Philip, and Daniel, and I were in one bedroom. There was one desk, one dresser, and all of our clothes were in there. You didn't have much, but my parents, we never went hungry. We were never hungry. We always had clothes on our back. It might have been donated to us, but we didn't care. It was new clothes. Look forward to the seasons changing, because then you got to get the box of winter stuff out and see what you fit into this year. And thought it was wonderful. So it's kind of crazy. The problem for me is that I was always the shortest boy in the family. So my brothers, Peter, Paul, and John, who are just older than me, I really couldn't fit into their clothes. I was too short and husky, they would say. So I'd have to go to the store and get my own pants and things like that. But it's to this day I hate shopping for clothes, because it was just my brothers would just go to the rack, pull it off, it would fit them, and then I'd have to spend a half hour finding something that the tailor could adjust to fit my short little legs. So, but it didn't stop me from being as competitive as I could in all of my sports. I never made a basketball team, but as Fred knows, I tried out for every one of them, but never made it. That's okay. I was successful in my track and cross country time. And what's interesting too is that in such a large family, now I think we're all retired at this point, but for the last 15 years, we have traveled to amazing places as siblings. Just incredible. As of siblings, 7 of us went to Africa and climbed Kilimanjaro. We've hiked the Inca Trail. We've hiked around Mont Blanc in France and Italy and Switzerland. We've gone to the Amazon. We've gone to New Zealand. Several family members went to Antarctica. So it's just amazing how, number one, we're all still alive. Number two, we've all had good careers and could afford to travel internationally like this. But the fact that we want to do this as siblings in our 60s and 70s, I don't know what was in the water that my parents gave us, or the food that they made, or whatever it was, but we actually like each other as siblings. You have to love them, but liking them to hang out. One of the sad parts, though, is there's some good and bad in all families. My father passed away 43 years ago. He was 54 years old, had a massive heart attack. I had the privilege of doing CPR on him and to tell my mother that he had passed. It was hard. 43 years, it still chokes me up, Jodi.
Yep.
But then on the flip side, My mother just celebrated her 100th birthday last November.
Wow.
Yeah. And the
Talk about a
vast,
superstar.
yeah, the majority of the family was there. So it was a little bit over 80 people, just family, just immediate family. That's all we need, so, if there's not 20 to 30 people there, it's not a party yet. So,
But Tim, if I may, Jodi, what your dad did, the love that he showed for your mom, and the environment of love with structured discipline.
yeah,
What's the football team? Seattle Seahawks. They talk about the 12th player, the fans.
yeah,
Anytime you walked into uh, the Rougeau's home, you were the 13th child, 12th child. That's how they made you feel. You were the 12th child. And what is remarkable about that love, 43 years later, their mom, who's 100 years old, all 11 of the siblings do not let their mother be alone on a daily, weekly basis. They take shifts every 11 weeks. They rotate, go back to Niagara Falls. Some still live there. They rotate to spend 5 days, 6 days with mom. And then, yes, and you talk about it's just
yeah,
incredible.
yeah. So,
Beautiful.
our mother's been in a nursing home for 3 years. And every day there's somebody with her 4 or 5 hours every morning from 9 o'clock till 12, 1 o'clock. And then another person comes in the afternoon for dinner time and is there when she goes to bed for 3 years, every day.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's and Philip still claims that your mom says he's the favorite, but I think she says that to all of you.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah. I
always
couldn't be,
the private story, right?
yeah, I couldn't be prouder of my family.
I'm
Beautiful.
proud of your family, and I just met you. I'm like, you don't hear that. You just don't. So many people, they get to a certain age and they're so lonely. The family just kind of goes on with their life and forgets about them. It's
Yeah,
horrible. It really is very difficult to see and hear the stories of that. So, but your story is there's so much to tell because, and I only met you briefly and heard a little of it. So there's so much I want to share with the listeners. So you were in Niagara Falls, you were competitive. And what did you want to be when you grew up? Like what was Timothy going to be when you were kind of in high school thinking about that?
I always wanted to be a police officer. I thought that's what I do in life. When I started college, my major was criminal justice, and I never wavered from that at the community college or at the university. Um, and I figured that was going to be my field. Um, However, after graduation, as a good, graduate with a bachelor's degree, what did I do? Started waiting tables at a restaurant for that last summer of fun before I had to really go out into the real world. And one of the things that attracted me to law enforcement was the structure. I liked the structure, the order of things. There's certain ways to do everything, and that appealed to my nature. So as I'm waiting tables, one of the fellow waiters said, "Tim, why don't you come out to the family bar tonight and meet my brother? He's coming in from California." So I said, "Okay." So I went out to the family bar, met his older brother. We started talking, and come to find out, he was a captain in the California Department of Corrections. My degree's in criminal justice. He said, "Tim, why don't you come out to California, be a correctional officer? You can make $1,600 a month." And for a 21-year-old with a little school debt behind me or in front of me to pay off and no obligations, right? No wife, no kids, nothing. I called my buddy John and said, "John, we have an offer to go to California and make $1,600 and be in law enforcement, right? And work in a prison." So a couple weeks later, we flew out to California, took the test, flew home, and then we got a call saying, "Come on out." So John and I hopped in his car and drove to California in October of 1980 and started as a correctional officer. John was a guy that I knew very well in high school. We went to community college together, lived together in the dorm at the university, and then came to California with. Our families grew together, after getting married and had children. We worked at the same institutions. We promoted nearly at the same time. Sad to say, though, life was very hard on John for a variety of reasons. And he committed suicide 24 years ago. I still keep in touch with his two children, though. Just wonderful kids, or adults at this point. But you never know what somebody else is going through and suffering with. Myself and some others reached out to John and tried to get him into the help that he needed. But life was very hard for John. Yeah. But it was interesting, though, in college, as roommates, we were the exact odd couple. He was very disorganized, very sloppy, and I'm very neat, very organized. I could tell you where everything was in my dorm room at any point in time. It's just the way I was. And people said, "How are you guys friends?" Because we're completely different, which I kind of liked. I like different. But so we ended up in California, in the Department of Corrections, and that's where I've been for the last 45 years. There's only two of my siblings that don't live in New York. Myself and my oldest brother, who after he retired, he moved to Florida. But other than that, everybody's still in New York. So I'm quite the black sheep of the family. Having moved to California, changed the pronunciation of the name, I'm terrible.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
What the public knows, I mean, again, hearing your stories for since 1980 of what happened, things that happen, in your leadership, Tim, and in the prison system, and the remarkable, just, a book in itself of what you had to deal with daily. In that system, how did you navigate when your values were tested?
Thanks for that question, Fred. They're tested quite often. In the 1980s, at least in California prison system, it's still a very harsh environment, and staff at times are very unprofessional, discourteous to the incarcerated population, and that just wasn't me. And so if I needed to do a search of an incarcerated person, I'd, "Excuse me, sir, can you step over here so I can conduct a search?" And my peers were looking at me like, "What the heck is this guy doing? You're just supposed to order them, make him do it." And that just wasn't who I am. And I got better compliance, less resistance, and an easier life because I just showed respect and humanity to the incarcerated population. Their punishment is to be separated from society, not for us to abuse them while they're incarcerated. So it was just that there was a time where a lieutenant ordered me to hit an inmate because the inmate wasn't doing what he was supposed to do. And I'm like, "No, I'm not going to hit the guy." And I walked away, and that lieutenant didn't talk to me again. And it was interesting because we shared an office. Our desks actually faced each other, and he would not talk to me. I moved out of that position relatively quickly to get away from that kind of environment. But it's, all I could do is hold my values and not allow the negative setting of prisons wear me down. So many people start work in a prison environment and, in my view, become inmate-like. They take on the characteristics of the population. It's very negative. In the 80s, they're starting to get tattoos. Their pants are hanging down. They start talking like inmates, using their vernacular. And I never saw it that way. I thought our job as staff was to be the model for the incarcerated population to emulate as they return to society, not for us to become like them, like incarcerated people, right? They have to survive in there. And there are certain, unwritten rules of how the population is supposed to act with staff. I said, that's not who I am. And I'm not going to do that. It served me well in my career. I was able to accomplish things that other people didn't, as well as my nonviolence approach to everything. In law enforcement, at times you have to use force. I understand that. And when it's required and necessary, I've never had an issue with that. But if it could be avoided, then let's avoid it. And then there was a time, Fred, and I was working in a housing unit. They had just done yard recall in the afternoon, so every incarcerated person is in their cell. And then the security squad comes to the cell door, the front of the building, and they're getting ready because they're going to cell extract an incarcerated person who just walked across the yard and just went into their cell. And I said, "Who are you coming to get?" And they told me. I said, "Okay." So I walked up to the guy's cell, and I knew him. I still know his name to this day. And he's getting ready to fight. Because the population is viewing this, and within their culture, he cannot go quietly. He has to fight them, right? If staff show aggression, they have to respond with aggression. And I said, I used his name. I don't want to say it on the podcast. Called him by his name. I said, "How can we avoid this?" And he said, "I can't walk out of here in handcuffs." I said, "Okay, how about if it's just you and me and we'll walk out?" I could do that. Drop the bar. He walked out. I walked him out of the building. Said, "Here you go, guys." And gave him to the security squad. And they were mad at me because they wanted to fight the guy. That's not how it's supposed to go. That's not how it's supposed, and doing those little things, the population is watching me. They know what's going on. They're waiting to see the fight, And the reason they were getting that guy is because he was trafficking narcotics. That's reasonable. But guess what? Where was he getting the narcotics that he was trafficking? From a staff member.
Incredible.
Right? So, but you don't have to use force, right? It's a game that's played, at least it was in the 80s. I think it's better now. There's been a lot of good changes in our system, the California system, to this day. Now, situations like that would all be videotaped as a controlled use of force, and it's reviewed and analyzed, and could we have done something different or better? As luck would have it, that's one of the things that I got to create and implement in the 1990s as a result of a lawsuit. So, yeah.
So, that goes back, Jodi, to where I got a hug because of a decision versus retribution. Secondly, you talk about a change maker, an impact in a community.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Without a doubt.
My career has been beyond my wildest dreams. When I was a correctional officer, I thought if I ever make lieutenant, that would be the pinnacle of success, right? Making a lieutenant. Well, in 7 years, I was a lieutenant. I think part of it was because to be a correctional officer, you need a GED or high school diploma. And here I am at 21 years old with a bachelor's degree, so I could read, write, and analyze. So I tended to promote quickly. But then people, unbeknownst to me, I guess, recognized something in me. And so there was a lot of phone calls and says, "Tim, transfer here, come here, do this." So I was pulled into headquarters when there was a number of class action lawsuits against the Department of Corrections regarding mental health care. You have to think about, and most people in the community don't realize that there's 5 things that you have to do in a prison setting that are constitutionally required. Only 5 things: food, clothing, shelter, safety, and timely access to adequate health care. Those are the 5 things that you have to do when you incarcerate an individual. And so in the early 90s, there was a lawsuit about, access to mental health care. It's called the Coleman case. I was pulled into headquarters before the trial, and I got to work on the case and the trial, and then the order came out, and all these corrective measures had to be put in place. And then I became the chief of the class action litigation unit for the department. But I'm not a lawyer. I'm just Tim. Did that for several years. Then went back out to the institution as an associate warden, and came back to headquarters as a chief of a unit that managed then the class action litigation, audits and compliance, and correctional policy. And then got told to go to healthcare because there was a new class action regarding medical care. And I was the project director implementing that. That was a failure. And the Department of Corrections ended up with a receiver that had control of the whole medical care system. And I was the first state employee that the receiver said, I now report to him. And we did some great work there. And then after a few years, during that time, I was asked to go to San Quentin to be the chief executive officer for healthcare services, and to figure out how to divide the responsibilities at an institution between the warden and a CEO, because there's 2 different tracks and responsibilities. But how do you divide the budget, the staffing, the resources? So I had to figure all that out to create new positions. So that was a lot of fun. Then came back to headquarters and was put in as the chief operating officer for all of statewide healthcare services. As Fred knows, it was about a $1.3 billion budget at the time. And again, I'm just, put in these positions by people above me and said, Tim, just, you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. Okay.
Right.
That athletic director in 1977 saw something.
Yeah. I've worked with some amazing people. And then once I retired, I was a retired annuitant for 4 years and trained the new CEOs in the department. Then I left again, and then the special master in the Coleman case, the mental health class action case, was still going on. He called me and asked if I'd like to work on his team, monitoring the system regarding mental health care. And I worked for him for 12 years. And now, about 3 months ago, that changed. There's no longer a special master. There's a receiver in the mental health care. And the receiver offered me a position to work in her unit as a receiver staff, auditing the system still. So, the case started in 1995, the Coleman case, and I'm still on it, and I'd love to see it to the end because, a lot of care has improved in the system, but there's still a few things that need to be resolved. And I think they'll get there underneath the receiver's authority. Yeah.
If you never went to that bar all those years ago and had that conversation, none of all of what you just shared would even be in existence. Right. Isn't that incredible?
It is. What I tell people that, younger people that I come in contact with, I said, just show up every day for work. Just show up. Do the best you can with whatever it is. But if you show up, opportunities will present themselves. Yeah.
All the time.
I think that's what it was. I just kept showing up at work, right? I'm that tenacious little kid that just keeps showing up.
In a world where trust drives decisions and relationships matter more than transactions, disconnection is something businesses simply cannot afford. I'm Jodi Hope Grinwald, a leadership and connection strategist, and my work is different because I don't offer just a single framework or surface level fix. I bring an entire ecosystem built on connection with me. I work across leadership, career transition, teams, and client relationships, helping organizations rebuild trust where it may be strained and design their work so disconnection doesn't happen in the first place. Because when one link is off, it affects everything, and sustainable growth depends on keeping those connections strong. To learn more or inquire about me speaking at any of your events, reach out to me at Jodi, Jodi, at todayisthedayliveit.com. Let me ask you something. If you could create a perfect world, and this is probably a very long answer, so however you want to answer this, obviously you've seen so much of the prison system, and you've gotten to watch it, you've gotten to implement things. What really could it look like? Where is this consistency of things going wrong really stemming from? And you talk a lot about the staff too. I mean, unfortunately, you see it in the movies, right? That there's always that. I hate that they do that, and I always wonder if it's just stigma. But it sounds to me like it's not just stigma. It really does happen in the real world out there, that there are corrupt correction officers out there doing things they shouldn't be doing. They're just they're not. It's not handled the way it could be.
Correct. It will be a long answer, Jodi. So first, I think they need to, at least in California, raise the bar as to become a correctional officer. It has to be more than a GED and a high school diploma. You need to have a little bit higher cognitive analysis and thought process. And not to say that people that have only high school diplomas can't or don't have that. It's just that I think it's better off if you have at least some degree. And there has to be some kind of psychological assessment so that you're not hiring people that are going into this field as a power trip, right? And there are, I believe, indicators that could be identified whether or not the person will have, the right mentality to handle this ultimate power over another human being, as to when they wake up and when they go to bed, whether they could take a shower or get a clean towel or go to eat. I mean, it's everything. You have a lot of control over people. So there has to be better screening of the staff. I think in California, they are doing this a little bit better, but the rehabilitative nature of corrections, right? You can't just lock them up and expect them to be better people when they're released. They have to have the services and opportunities to change their pattern, right? They need a job skill, and there are many opportunities in corrections for that today. But of course, during budget crisis times, those are the first programs to go, right? Because so many people in the community think just lock them up and put them away. But wait a minute, there's thousands of people, staff that have to go in and out of these prisons every day. And the majority of people that are incarcerated across the country are going to be released into our communities. Do you want them to be better citizens or not? Right? Third, at least in California, the number of incarcerated people with mental illness has significantly increased, even with the population going down. Over 30% of the current population have an identified mental illness. Well, many years ago, there was a push to, decentralize mental health care, right? And that take it from the state hospital system and push it back into the community. Well, that has never actually taken hold. There's never been the community programs to take care of our mentally ill population. So they end up in prison. And they shouldn't be in prisons. They have a mental illness, right? If somebody has a broken arm, you'd treat the broken arm. You could see it, right? With mental illness, you can't see it. Many times it's a chemical imbalance in the brain. If you put them on the right medication, you give them the right, counseling and supportive services, they're fine, upstanding citizens, right? I've seen it over and over again in the correctional setting. Once they get out of that crisis, they're wonderful people, right? So prison should not be where our mentally ill population is housed. So that needs to be a focus. Um, and I think staff do need to have, uh, more support and openness of the stresses of working in such a negative environment. There are very violent people in prisons. It's a violent environment. Why I've been able to compartmentalize all of that and not have it change who I am or how I view people in the community, I don't know what it is. Two of my brothers were in law enforcement in New York. They're New York State troopers. They also saw, a lot of negative behavior of humans, but yet it hasn't changed their view of humanity either. I think that was the greatest success of my career is that I was able to leave still with humanity for the incarcerated population. And let's see, it was last month that I really had an incredible experience in that. An incarcerated person I knew back in the late 90s, early 2000s. He just stood out to me in the prison setting. And I ended up writing him a letter supporting his parole. He had been convicted of a kidnap robbery when he was 19 years old, 19, 20 years old. But he just stood out to me on the yard as a very upstanding person. I saw him in the visiting room with his wife, with his parents, talked to all of them. Well, he got paroled in the early 2000s. He sent me a letter at work telling me that he was paroled and thanking me for the letter, that I had sent to the parole board, supporting his release. Or actually, it was just my observation of him in the prison environment, how different he was. And then in February, he sent me a message saying, "Hey, my son is playing, in basketball, freshman in high school basketball. Love to have you come out to the game." Well, I took my grandson and my wife to the game to meet this former incarcerated person, former parolee, and he sees me walk in the gym. What does he do? Gives me a great big hug. All right. And I introduce him to my wife, and my grandson. Right. This is what it's supposed to be. We have to support these people, change the trajectory of their life. But Jodi, there's a lot of people in corrections. Hopefully it's a minority that see me as an inmate lover. No, I'm a person lover. Just, right. You have to allow people to change and grow, right? The fact that they're in prison is because of the worst day of their life. They committed a crime. That's the worst day of their life. And they're going to pay for that one decision, right? For a long, long time. You have to let them get out of that box and become better people.
So beautifully put and incredible to have that kind of empathy, and more people need to understand. That's why I'm so glad you're sharing your journey and your story. And as Fred said, you're such a change maker. That's just so true. And we've only spoken about his career. There's so many things that he's all about. Fred, did you have any other questions on this before I wanted to move to a different topic?
No, I have a comment, but can I have the comment?
Yeah, of course.
You talk about a people lover, humanity. Tim is 100% consistent in who he is, 110%. Tim, can you, and I find this relatable. Can you share the letters that you write people?
Well, you're going to make me cry again, Fred.
It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Have you read the letters? Or you just heard about them?
You told me. One time we met in Portland and we drove up to the campsite, and I didn't know this about you, but you were just finishing up one, and it's just beautiful.
Yeah. So I think there's two parts of it, right, Fred? There's letters I've written to people that have impacted my life, right? Principal of my high school, Father Mike Moore. There's a professor. There's a freshman English teacher, Father John Lindsay. There's a professor in college, right? And so 30, 40 years on, I find these people and I write and tell them with specificity as to what they meant to me, how they impacted my life, and made me a better person. I think it's important to tell people what impact they had on your life, right? Teachers and other people have no idea how they impact you. You know, that one small interaction could have a huge impact. Father Michael Moore, there's a picture of him in our yearbook where he's carrying the mailbag for the school down the hallway. And for me, that was a perfect example of a servant leader, right? He's the principal of the school and he's lugging the mail down the hallway, right? That's what I want to be, a servant leader. Um, you know, Father John Lindsay, English teacher. I was terrible at freshman English and had to do a lot of remedial work in that class with him and others. But then fast forward to my career in corrections, one thing I was known for was my clarity of writing. And it was because of John Lindsay, Father John Lindsay. And I was able to write him that letter before he passed away. And his brother sent me a response saying that John really liked it, and he graded my paper an A. So I was very pleased with that. But then there's the other letters that I write is, growing up in such a large family, there's not a lot of time for, a supportive environment, right? It's all, if my father was talking to any one of us, it was to tell us to do something or not do something. There was never a hug at bedtime. There was never a statement of, I love you. It was demonstrated every day in other ways, right? We were never hungry. We always had clothes. We had shelter, right? But it wasn't said. There was no outward expression of that. So, and I felt as though that was something missing from my life growing up. I hugged my father when I was 17 years old, and it was like I was hugging a brick wall. He didn't know what to do. It was very strange to him. To this day, when I talk to my mother, I say, Mom, I love you. The response is, yeah, okay. Yeah, and that's it. Their generation just didn't know how to express it or whatever. So fast forward, as all of my siblings turned 60 years old, I wrote them a letter telling them how I felt, sharing some stories, memorable events that I had with every one of them. And what wonderful siblings they are. So I'm the weird one in the family because I express it. I'm going to tell you. And, so when I had a family, I was growing up, I missed that. I thought, so I told myself, when I have a family, I'm going to hug my kids. I'm going to tell them I love them. And I still do that to this day.
Beautiful.
That's it.
So beautiful.
Yeah. Were those the letters, Fred?
Those were the letters. And you had your final one with
Daniel.
Daniel. Yep. The 11.
Yep. Daniel has raised 4 amazing boys. Just incredible boys. But yeah. I think you're frozen, Fred. Jodi, are you frozen too?
I am not frozen. You're frozen.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
There we go.
We're
having
back.
Internet issues today for those listeners out there. And for those listeners out there, this has been such an incredible podcast, listening to Timothy Rougeux and Fred Wasiak, friends for 50 years. Just truly amazing. Tim, I did want to bring up one thing too, is that you did raise your children on your own, didn't you?
I did. So with all the career going on and all that, I ended up becoming a single dad when my children were 3, 4, and 6. which was at the time very hard. But I have a mindset, and I think I got it from my mother, that failure is not an option, and there's not going to be a failure. I read, you read in places where, children of divorced parents are less likely to this or more likely to do these bad things. And I said, not mine. If I have to be both mother and father, that's what I have to do. Even at the time with a broken heart, right? Didn't see the divorce coming, but it happened. And in retrospect, it was a good thing for all of us. But it was hard, getting them to school, dressed and fed, and running the household and working. As they got older, I ensured that I was part of their lives everywhere. I coached every one of them in soccer. Soccer was the sport my oldest loved, as well as I loved it. I don't know if Fred ever remembered, but I used to make the track and cross country team play soccer after practice because I wanted to play soccer. So
he just needed to. He wanted to show off, and which he did.
There's nothing more fun than running and kicking a ball, right? But I was part of my kids' lives intimately. Attended their sporting events, their plays, their activities, the parties, birthday parties, graduations were always at my house. Like my mother, there was always room for one more. So kids came here, stayed here, slept here if need be. It's the hardest and the proudest thing I am, because my three children have become wonderful adults in each of their fields. And hopefully it's due to what I showed them. Not that I did everything right, and I apologize to them for my failures. And I did it at the time. You go off the handle because of the stresses of life. But I would come back and apologize for my behavior to my children. I think that's necessary. It teaches them that even adults can be wrong, right? That's part of it, right? And have conversations with their parent. I really never had any intimate conversations with my parents. It just wasn't how things were done, but I wanted to change that with my children. And we talk about anything and everything. But it sometimes uncomfortable things to do as a parent, and you're just forced upon it. Like when my daughter, was ready for a training bra. Okay, let's go do that, and you get it done. You just get it done. You show up every day. You're here every day. It was a struggle. I'm glad. I think I'm a better person for it. In the way I handled it.
There's probably a single parent listening right now. One of the countries, we're blessed to have 137 countries download this podcast, and I guarantee there's going to be a single parent listening somewhere in the world. Any advice for that single parent that's going through it right now?
I think give yourself some grace is number one. You're going to have some failures. You're going to get upset when you shouldn't get upset. Try and take that step back, as well as always have something for yourself, right? Some small thing that's still yours, because, the children, become overwhelming in their needs. And set the parameters, right? You can only do so much, and, set those expectations that the children know that, yes, I could do this, but I can't do that. And that's okay. It's hard to say no to your children, but sometimes you have to. And they understand that. They'll learn that, mom or dad, whoever it is doing the best that they can. And tell them that. It's like, look, I wish I could, you don't have to, sugarcoat it. I think children understand more than we give them credit for. But I thought it was important to always do something for yourself that supports you, supports your mental health. The thing, and Fred knows, what I had in my life was running. That's what I did to treat me and made me a better father throughout the years.
The other thing is we when we talk about single parenthood, there's a lot of heartache in it. You know what I'm saying? There's heartbreak, and we can't just, kind of only talk about the kids. The kids, of course, like you said, they have that resiliency, but as adults, it's harder sometimes to pick yourself up. Was there something that you did besides running, or was it therapy? Was there anything that you did to help yourself mend your heart?
Yeah. I can't think of anything specifically other than, time. Time heals a lot of it. Well, I guess there was one thing, Jodi, because I still have them. I did quite a bit of journaling, which is, basically talking to myself, expressing what I was feeling at that moment and how I could do something better next time, different next time, break out of that pattern, and telling myself that, it is getting better. I can get through this. I am going to be stronger next time. Have a plan of how you're going to interact. It feels like the Band-Aid is torn off every time, when you see, that other person, right? And there's an interaction, right? It's stabbing into the heart. So how are you going to respond to that? Think about your response, right? And one of the things that I've tried to do is avoid having to apologize for something I said in haste or did in haste. So at times it looks like I'm not responding at all. That's because I can't do anything that's going to be positive in the moment. Stop and think about it. You don't have to react, just because somebody else wants you to react in a certain way or say something. Take your time. Think about it. And that's what I've tried to do. It's frustrating for the other person because they want a reaction, they want the drama. I'm not about drama. And as I've gotten older, I'm even more adverse to drama. I don't need that in my life. So I would say, the journaling and time. And now, at times I'll go back and read those journals, relive it. Remind myself of that time in my life, and I'm still very proud of what the outcome has been with my adult children now. And they all have a relationship with their mother. It's what they want at this point in time, and I've always encouraged them to do that. It's what the difference between their mother and I is ours, right? And even today, we still can get along. We could be in the same place. We still love our children, just from different points. She's been remarried for over 30 years. I've been remarried for 12, I think. Yeah.
Oh boy.
My wife and I, we forget our anniversary. Our first anniversary, both of us forgot it.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
As long as you both forgot it,
we did.
There's safety in that.
Yeah. We don't believe in the Hallmark holidays just because somebody says you're supposed to do something, right? We show the love for each other every day in the little things, right? So I know you guys won't believe this, but even in California, we think it's cold, right? So we have, bed warmers on our beds, right? So at some point in the night, one or the other will go turn on the bed warmer, before we go to bed. Those little things, the little things day in and day out shows the love, not the flowers and the overreaction on, Valentine's Day or anniversary or birthday. No, it's the little things day in and day out that show it. And that's what I believe.
Yes, I agree with you 100%.
Jodi, Tim, what you just shared with us and your leadership is, and from when I met you 50 years ago, and journaling is a mindful practice.
Yeah.
what has worked for you and resonated in the community and relationships that you have built is because you are present. And when you're present in front of that other person, that's a gift to them. And, your whole story and beyond is that you are present. That's
Uh,
cool. That's really cool.
yeah. Well, that's something that you've done since I've known you, Fred, right? That presence you have and enjoying the moment
Yeah.
wherever you are,
Yeah.
right? Is something, as we're walking home from the Y and our hair is frozen, right? Yeah.
Yes.
It's like a
So many
helmet.
of those days.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have 50 years knowing Fred, but since I've met him, he's been my mentor too. And he's definitely been that go-to person for me. I'm blessed to know him. Everybody who knows Fred feels blessed to know him. And then he introduces us to other people that we're blessed to know, like you now, Tim. Like
Yeah.
right before, I'm gonna let the cat out of the bag here. Right before Fred was giving Tim all of the things that I'm gonna be asking. Do you want to be part of the Changemakers? This, that. He's giving away all my secrets because we bring in the community. This is a community. It's an ecosystem of caring, heart-centered people who care about making a difference in their corner of the world and beyond. And I'm so blessed to know so many of those people, and I want them all to know each other because we do better together. That's just how I feel.
Absolutely. Yep.
Fred, is there anything else you want to ask Tim? I know we could be on for about 2 hours, but I know we're over our hour time already.
Yeah, I do. First of all, I want to say, Tim, I appreciate you and I love you.
I love you too, Fred.
Mentor, coach, friend. And when we get together, thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. When we get together, we always talk about life, philosophy, journey, and we rehash the stories from 50 years ago, and for 50 years we add a story. So every time we get together, the stories become longer. But Tim, your spirit is infectious. Your zest for life is infectious. Everything you talked about today is such an inspiration. My question to you, Tim, is now, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah. I I I don't know, Fred. I I really have to think about that. One of the things that really brings me joy is coaching people to achieve their running goals, running and walking goals. I did that in my youth, and I returned to that, in the early 20 teens, coaching adults. I find a lot of joy in that. I've gotten people to their 100K races, 100-mile races, 50-mile races. Um, to me, that's a success because, like I said earlier, running has been such a huge part of my life. I kind of say I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a runner. And then it's after that. That's how impactful it's been. And I've been struggling the last 3 years because I had a hip replacement and now I can't run. So I have to find other ways to stay positive, but
You do.
I will. I will. Yeah.
You're not
What
in.
do I want to be when I grow up?
Well, next time I see you.
Yeah, yeah, in
Right.
September.
That's a good question for all the retirees, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That'll be the next podcast. You'll come back with that answer and all the things that you're doing. And although like you said, you're not running right now, you're helping so many other people do that. I would assume there's got to be some great fulfillment in hearing their stories too of what you've been able to help them do.
Yeah. It is. It's a lot of fun. I'm still part of so the running group I was in, it had from runners to walkers. And because it had walkers, I returned to the group. And so, this past Saturday, I walked 7 miles with a group of 10 people, just talking and enjoying. The day flies by, right? The 2 hours of out there walking is a lot of fun. That community of people that you would never meet otherwise in the world. So it's still part of who I am, and I'll stay in that community. I have I'll be at an aid station in the Western States 100-mile race in June this year. It'll be the third time I'm at the aid station. It's mile 38. It starts in the Tahoe and it finishes in Auburn. 100 miles. Yeah, it's incredible what these people are able to do. Yeah.
Gosh, I'm exhausted just hearing about that. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I just want to go for a walk today in the 70-degree weather, like in my neighborhood. My goal for today.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you to both of you. Fred, any other last minute thoughts before we go?
This was beautiful. And Tim, thank you for accepting this invitation. I warned Jodi that you have great stories, and I'm glad that you accepted her invitation to join us today. And it just, you're a unbelievable human being.
Thank you, Fred. It's been a wonderful journey. I couldn't imagine all of this as a kid growing up on 8th Street. Right, the world was very small. Yeah, and somebody once told me you can't choose what you don't know exists. And once you break out of that bubble of what you think is the universe, the possibilities are endless. And it sure feels that way. At this stage of life, my motto is say yes. Just say yes.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah.
That one decision changes the whole trajectory. It's
Absolutely.
incredible.
Yep. Yeah.
You have to be open, you have to be present, all those things that we talked about just during this entire interview. Being open, being present, and just, empathy is a beautiful thing, and it's wonderful. Your heart, and I love yous. They're so important, and I do agree with you. Certain generations don't say them as much as others. I would, my Fred knows my mom. She's a hugger now, but she wasn't back then. So I understand exactly what you're talking about. There's certain generations that are just
Yeah.
didn't grow up that way. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for your heart, and
You're welcome.
I'm grateful to know you now. And just that one decision that I made to write the book and then head to California, I wouldn't have met you otherwise.
Yeah. I've enjoyed the ride here, Jodi, and everything that you're doing through the book and the community that you're establishing here. And I'd be glad to be part of it.
Well, and that's it. Now it's on tape and everybody's heard that.
Well,
He's
Fred is very convincing, as you well know, right? Well, he wants you to do 10. Nope. Once you get to 10, he's going to say, okay, do 20, right? That's how Fred is.
You
Good.
remember though, during the book launch in California, he said, "Nobody says no to Jodi." I should have turned around during that moment and said, "Wait a minute. Nobody says no to Fred, including me, who
Yeah.
went from 10 authors to 31."
Well, this was selfish on my part. I didn't care to hear Tim's story because I've been hearing it for 50 years. I just wanted to have another partner on a committee for the International Forum. So this worked out.
Yeah.
I love it. I love how you figured that out. That was well done. Nicely done.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
In my head, there's these chunks of my life. I have, my work, 45 years in the prison setting. I have, family, large family, and I have my running community, and I have, my longtime friends. So these buckets of people, and it's all intermingled, and I think it makes for a very fulfilling life.
Yeah.
I do have one last question.
Yes.
When your entire family gets together now with all the kids from 11 children, how many people are in one group? All of you together.
So it's a little bit over 80. I think it's around 83, 84. My brother Philip's daughter, Jennifer, just had a baby 6 weeks ago. I think there's one or two of my mother's great grandchildren that are pregnant right now. So a baby was born 3 days before my mother's birthday. So it's the exponential numbers here. Yeah, but it is interesting that I have 3 sisters, only one is married, and none of them had children. All the boys married, have children.
Carrying on the name.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Absolutely.
Holidays have to be super fun. That is so cool. Let's just get the family together. 80 of us. That's just
Yeah.
I love.
But I would tell you, each one of my siblings has their own story and their own successes in life. There's a lot there. If you just, each one of them can be interviewed. They've done amazing things.
Well, we might have to have that conversation and then you can co-host. There, you see? You
and
see what I
and
did there,
prompt them.
Fred?
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't know all of them would do it, but I'm sure some would. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Like
thank you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, my younger brother Philip, who is Fred's very good friend, he was in the New York State Troopers and he retired after 33 years as a staff inspector, right? So you have officer, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, major, and then staff inspector. Yeah, so he was very high up in the New York State Troopers. And Philip is a goofy guy too, right? But
No question. And
he's,
you met Philip. Philip was at the book signing.
That's
yeah,
right. I did meet
yeah.
Philip. That is correct. And that he was not happy with you, Fred, back in the day. So, it's good
Right,
that he's
right.
he's
Uh,
he's over
he-
it now.
that's fine. It didn't matter how he felt. It was just I want to make sure my coach was on the same page.
No.
Phil got over it, but we like to talk about it.
Yep. So, all
I
right.
love it. Thank you
Thank you,
so
you
much,
guys.
Timothy. Thank you, Fred. And I'm going to say what I say at the end of every single podcast. Today is the day. You cannot go back to yesterday, and you do not yet own tomorrow. So, what small or large steps are you going to take today to get yourself closer to your goals? Have a great week, everyone. And thank you so much again to Timothy Rougeux and Fred Wasiak. Bye, everyone.